Let's get into the blueprint section. Now, with the birth of Threads, right? The conversation of, okay, why did Zuck make this application? It's pretty much the same as Twitter. Like, what are we doing? Even going back when Elon bought Twitter, why is he buying Twitter? What is the point? This man owns Tesla. He knows nothing about social media. And both of them, regardless, two different individuals who I heard they're going to fight in real life. That should be interesting. But two different individuals, they both saw a gap in the market. And how they went about it, even though differently, the reason is something that we can take and dissect and try to learn for ourselves. So listen to why Zuck, I'm not calling him his full name, but Zuck made Threads, which at the time of this interview was called Project 92, and why Elon Musk purchased Twitter.
For whatever reason, I feel like Twitter has not lived up to what I would have thought its full potential should be. And I think that the current, I think Elon thinks that, right? And that's probably one of the reasons why he bought it. And I do think that there are ways to consider alternative approaches to this. And one is this open and federated approach, where you're seeing with Mastodon, and you're seeing that a little bit with Blue Sky. I think that it's possible that something that melds some of those ideas with the graph and identity system that people have already cultivated on Instagram could be a kind of very welcome contribution to that space.
I also thought that I was growing increasingly concerned that there was a lack of freedom of speech and freedom of expression, and that there was a lot of censorship, and a lot of censorship was, some of it was obvious, a lot of it was hidden.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really unhealthy for public discourse.
So the angle that I want to go about it this week is, by listening to this clip, realizing that both of them saw a problem and created a solution. And when we're thinking about growing a brand, building a business, it starts with what the problem is and what is the solution that we have. Now, it doesn't mean we are creating a whole new solution sometimes. Sometimes it's about enhancing, improving, making it better. It's not about, let me create a whole new thing with a whole new experience. It could be dedicated to a certain crowd, certain age group, certain status. But listening, and I want to have this conversation, especially with you, Moose, from a business side of, how do we identify the gaps? Because some of us will look at certain markets, certain niches, and be like, okay, I just got to follow that blueprint. I just got to do it that way. Where we listen to Zuck and we listen to Elon, and they specifically pointed out certain things like, I don't necessarily like this, so I'm going to create the change. I'm going to do something different that I believe should be there. Now, if it's right or wrong, that's not the question, but they saw the problem and they are now being the change that they want to see. And so from your standpoint, how does one identify gaps within, the business world?
Yeah, it really happens when you don't take things as face value, right? When you're engaging with, whether it be an app, a social media platform, a product, or even a service, when you're not just taking it on as a consumer or as a fan, but you're exploring and thinking about, how does this really integrate into the different verticals that I'm a part of, whether that be other businesses, communities even, and what is the marketplace calling for that maybe they don't have the courage to speak out and say, hey, I need this, right? Because when you look at what Elon Musk did, he always dabbled in the political sphere. He has been known to just publicly share his thoughts around, I don't agree with this political stance, or I think this should happen, right? He just openly has done that. Mark Zuckerberg, on the other hand, not so much, right? With the exception of him being called in to Congress and the whole he didn't want anything to do. He's not really a political person like that. Obviously, until the time he was called to the stand, then it was a different approach. And so you can see why, or it begins to make sense why Elon Musk said, no, I think that this is something important for not just this particular social media platform, but for the world, because it's getting to a point where it's affecting our elections. And so here's the change I want to make. All right. Now, there's some conversation around, hey, was his approach too aggressive? And we covered this on the podcast when he first brought the company, and we said all of the layoffs and the way he's putting people out, did he give maybe Mark the keys to build a competitor, right? Because he was laying so many people off. It's like possible, right? It does leave some room for question. And then, of course, Mark Zuckerberg, on the other hand, it's the same thing, right? It's like, okay, I see what's happening. I'm in the space. I am a direct competitor of what you're doing. And here's what I would do differently. And I think that's what you're seeing here. So in short, it's just really having the mentality and the approach of not taking things at face value and looking at it to say, what is the marketplace calling for, even if they don't have the courage to necessarily voice that concern?
Yeah, and from a branding side of finding the gaps, we have to study the competition. We have to study the market. And when we're studying it, we're going about, okay, what does their brand colors look like? What does their content looking like? What is their mission looking like? Who's the audience that they have? And breaking all of these things down to where, okay, where do I fit in? How does my approach different? Like, I don't want to jump into the same pool. I'm already with the niche that I have. I'm already jumping into the same pool, but I don't want to jump into the same pool with the same audience, with the same look, with the same vibe, same tone, same mission. I don't want to do that, because how do you stand out? Even though when we look at the difference between like Threads and Twitter, to the masses, that doesn't seem too much of a difference, right? You know, you're like, okay, it's a text base. They both have light and dark mode. They both take pictures. They both, even though it's not the easiest, they both do GIFs. They both do video. Like, what is the difference? This is where Meta is concentrating more on the experience than necessarily the true difference at this moment. The experience is what's going to make them different. So everything from a seamless, transition into the platform, the instant growth of following, the the reach that you're able to have compared to Twitter, the lifespan, what it seems of how long a thread lasts compared to a tweet. All these different things, and even being able to cross promote, from as easy as hitting share to be able to have a picture going into your Instagram stories, going into your Instagram post. And there's even one for a tweet that I haven't necessarily tried, but I think that's very petty, right? I think that's very petty. But even taking that approach of maybe your brand isn't all the way different, then how can you create a better experience? I look at restaurants where, the experience of that is what makes them different. Clothing brands where some will go more on the exclusive route. Why? Because of the experience. When we are creating or when we are growing our brands, if we want to go the experience route, what are we doing for them to say, yo, this is different. This is exactly what I need. I didn't even know I needed this. Where if we're talking about personal brands and from a educational standpoint, okay, everybody has a course. But when I come into the community, the vibe is different. We're doing different calls. We're doing different challenges. If you're going from a motivational standpoint, yo, the text messages are different. I'm getting the motivation sent straight to me, and I don't have to look for it. From an entertainment standpoint, that could be multiple different ways, right? So studying the competitor, studying who's already out there, finding the gaps is just like they did. And if you want to go the experience route, then really figure out the feel and the storytelling that you are about to tell your audience in order to get them intrigued and be like, yo, I need this. I need this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And just to kind of add on to just what Mark has done, and it's crazy because there's a whole philosophy and teaching around what is called in the business world, and even more of a popular book than anything, but a blue ocean strategy, right? It's, hey, how do you not build around competing with others, but how do you build in a way that doesn't interact with what anyone is doing? You just kind of introduce something entirely new to the marketplace. And I don't know if he's the only one, but he's got to be one of the very few that has made a living out of taking people out. Oh, Vine? Oh, okay. Well, let me dabble into your world. Oh, Snapchat. Hey, yeah, let me introduce you to he's literally made a living out of going for people who are at the top of their game, who have the most hype, and says, no, let me go right at them, build a competing product. But as I do that, I vertically integrate more of these features right into my app or right into my umbrella of companies or brands. And so this is one of the rare examples that I have to highlight and say, Mark is really known for this now to go after it. So of course there's conversation around, hey, this is gonna end up being some form of legal battle, but we'll see how it goes. But I do gotta give my hat off to him for that, because dude is literally, he's starting to build a track record for just going at people's necks and technically just taking their product or idea, making it better, integrating it into what he has, and just keeps it moving.
Yeah, I don't think that lawsuit's going to go too far. He, like you said, he has a track record. They've probably already tried multiple times. He knows how to steal. It's like steal like an artist. I gotta still read that book. I need to do that.
Yeah.
Steal like an artist. He does that very well. He does that very, very well.